Hello everyone, and welcome to the NLE Ninja Effects. I'm the NLE Ninja, Wes James, and I'm here to show you how to do creative effects in popular editing softwares such as Final Cut Pro 7, Premiere Pro CS5, and Avid Media Composer 5. So for each tutorial, I'll show you how to do something awesome in one of these three applications. For the first tutorial of the NLE Ninja Effects, I thought of doing a tutorial I haven't done in a while. So I'm here to show you the long-awaited Music Video Effects Volume 3. In this volume, I'll show you 9 intermediate effects that you can use in your next video. And just to make sure there's no confusion, all the clips and effects are in HD. So enough talk, let's preview what we'll be learning how to do today. Before we begin, there are a few things you need to know so that we can proceed. Most of the techniques I discuss involve the use of travel mats, the image mask key, the crop tool, the basic 3D filter, and iIndustrial Revolution's multi-space filter. If you're a beginner and don't understand how these items work, I recommend you go to the link from my Final Cut Pro 7 tutorial playlist. I've discussed these items before, and they should be able to help you out. Also, for some of the effects, I'll have a custom background I created using a cell generator and distort filters. Photoshop will also play a part in most of these effects, so if you don't have it, you can use Motion or some other image editing software. Press Command 0 to bring up your sequence settings. Go to your timeline options. Make sure you have clip keyframes enabled, and make sure the motion and filters bars are enabled. After you do that, hit OK. If I use any third-party plugins, I'll provide a link to download a trial later on. Let's move on to our first effect, Magnifying Wipe with lens flares. For this effect, Photoshop is required. Let's move on over to Photoshop right now. In Photoshop, I created a rectangle shape and then distorted it with the free transform option. I then duplicated the matte and added a stroke. I decreased the fill of the matte with the stroke so the only thing visible was the stroke. I saved each matte as a PNG and then imported them into Final Cut Pro. With my clip in the timeline, let's duplicate it. Move the duplicated clip one track up. Place the matte underneath the duplicated clip. Select the clip on track 1 and press Ctrl B to disable it. Right-click the duplicated clip and go to Composite mode. Select Travel Matte Alpha. Now, the clip takes the shape of the matte. Double-click your matte and go to the Motion tab. Move the playhead to the matte's endpoint. Set a keyframe for the center at its endpoint. Move the matte off-screen to the left. Move to the mat's out point and set a keyframe for center. Move the mat completely off screen to the right. Place the mat stroke on the track above the duplicated clip. Select the original mat and press Command C. Select the mat stroke and press Option V to paste attributes. Select Basic Motion and hit OK. Double-click the duplicated clip and go to the Motion tab. Increase the scale to somewhere between 120 and 130. Select the duplicated clip, the mat stroke, and nest items, and then name it accordingly. Select the clip on track 1 and hit the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-B to re-enable it. Activate the crop tool. Hold down the Command key and crop from either the top or bottom to crop uniformly. Crop until you've highlighted as much of the subject as you want. Let's place some lens flares on top of everything. Place a lens flare on track 3. Duplicate the lens flare in the timeline. Double-click the lens flare on the top and go to the Motion tab. Let's change the scale to somewhere between 115 and 120. And let's give it an opacity of about 78. Right-click, copy, and select the other flare on track 3 and press Option V to paste attributes. Select Basic Motion and Opacity and hit OK. Place one flare on the bottom of the crop clip and one on the top. Let's render this by pressing Option R. I'll be back with you in just a second. Once you've rendered, let's see what we got. There you go. We have a magnifying wipe and lens flares to accompany it. Use this effect in your next video, and if you want, you can take it a step further by having two wipes go across the clip. Let's move on to our next effect, video unstacking. For this effect, I'll be using the basic 3D filter to accomplish it. I have 5 clips on top of a cell generator that I have on track 1. Go to your effects browser, video filters, scroll down to perspective, select basic 3D and apply it to your clip on track 6. Double click the filter bar for clip 6 in the timeline to go to the filters tab. Make sure the playhead is at the endpoint. Move the playhead about 5 frames forward and place a keyframe for center and scale. Move about 12 frames and set a keyframe for scale, center, and Y rotation. Move about 12 more frames and set a keyframe for scale and center. And then move about 12 more frames and set a keyframe for scale, center, and Y rotation. Go back to your first keyframe and change the scale to 25. Go to your second keyframe and change the scale to 50. Move to the third keyframe and change the X position on the center to about -400 and the scale to 50. Move to the last keyframe and change the scale to 28 and the Y rotation to 360 and the center to -400. Select the clip on track 6 and press Command C to copy. Marquee the clips on tracks 3, 4, and 5. Press Option V to paste attributes. Select Filters and press OK. Let's offset the 3D animation by shifting the filters bars in the timeline and having a staggered animation. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion. Once we've offset our keyframes, we need to change the center values for the clips on tracks 3, 4, and 5. You can place them to taste. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion, so I'll be back with you in just a second. For the clip on track 2, I'll place its own basic 3D filter by going to the video filters and grabbing a basic 3D filter. Set two keyframes 11 frames apart for the scale parameter. For the first keyframe, set it to 25, and for the second keyframe, set it to 28. In the timeline, move the filter bar keyframes so they match up with the last two keyframes of the clip on track 3. For our cell generator, I'm going to apply a filter pack to get the results I want. I'll be back with you in just a second. And I'm back. The filters I applied for this generator are in this order: stripes, bloom, and target. You can modify these filters to get the look that you want. Let's render this and see what we got. I'll be back with you guys in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Let's see what we got. There you go. A nice rotating animation for a group of clips, as well as a custom background using native filters in Final Cut Pro. Let's move on to our next effect, logo reveal, zoom out. This effect was inspired by watching fast food commercials and restaurant commercials. For this effect, I'm going to use Photoshop and iDustro Revolution's multi-space filter, which you can download for free. Let's go to Photoshop so I can give you a quick breakdown of how I created my logo matte. In Photoshop, I created a document that matched my video dimensions. I created a layer with a solid color. I brought in a logo that had transparency in it. If you command-click the thumbnail of the logo, it will highlight a selection. I turned off the logo's visibility and selected my solid layer. I pressed delete and it removed a piece of the solid layer based on my selection, and it gave me transparency in that area. I turned the logo's visibility back on and saved it as a PSD file. Import the PSD file into Final Cut Pro. In your project browser, select the PSD sequence and press Option D to duplicate it. Name the original logo and the duplicate logo matte. I'm going to go into each PSD sequence and solo the items that are relevant to the sequence name by pressing Ctrl S. I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. With your clip in the timeline, place the logo matte on track 2 and the logo PSD on track 3. Move the playhead about 11 frames from its endpoint. Option double-click the logo PSD on track 3 and go to the Motion tab. Twirl down the opacity parameter. Set a keyframe for opacity at the playhead's position. Move the playhead about 20 frames and reduce the opacity to 0. Go to the Effects browser, Video Filters, scroll down to iDustro Revolution, and apply the multi-space filter to the logo matte on track 2. Option double-click the logo matte and go to the Filters tab. Reduce the opacity of input B. Set a keyframe for the position Z parameter at the playhead's position. Move the playhead about 22 frames and set another keyframe. Increase the position V value to 4. Let's render this by pressing Option R. I'll be back with you guys in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Let's see what we got. There you go, a logo reveal animation that ends with a zoom out of the cutout mat. Let's move on to our next effect, horizontal wipes on and off. This effect was inspired by people asking me how to do split screen effects and such. For this effect, all you need is the crop tool. I have 3 clips superimposed on each other. I'm going to solo the third clip by selecting it and pressing Ctrl S. Now, we can just focus on that clip. Double click the third clip and go to the Motion tab. Scroll down the crop parameter. If your playhead is not at the endpoint of your clip, hit Shift I to do so right now. Let's move the playhead 5 frames from its endpoint. Set 2 keyframes 12 frames apart for the left crop parameter. For the first keyframe, set it to 100. For the second keyframe, leave it at 0. Let's crop the top and bottom about 32% and position it at the center of the screen. I'm going to do this in a sped up motion, so I'll be back with you in just a second. Select the second clip and press Ctrl S to solo it. I'm going to repeat the same steps for this clip, but instead, I'll set 2 keyframes 12 frames apart for the right crop parameter where the playhead is at right now. I'm also going to place it in the center of the screen and crop top and bottom uniformly about the same percentage. I'm going to speed this up, so I'll be back with you in just a second. Select the first clip and press Ctrl S to solo it. I'm going to repeat the same steps for this clip, but instead I'll set 2 keyframes 12 frames apart for my left crop parameter. I'll also crop to highlight the subject and position it at the bottom of the screen, so I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Let's press Ctrl S to re-enable all 3 of our clips. If you have to, make any adjustments to your crops so that there isn't too big of a thick of black lines between them, like so. Let's animate our clips out in the opposite direction. Move the playhead to about the out point of your clips. Double click the third clip and go to the Motion tab. Scroll down the crop parameter. Set 2 keyframes 12 frames apart for the right crop parameter and set the second keyframe to 100. Let's repeat this for the first and second clip. For the second clip, set 2 keyframes 12 frames apart on the left crop parameter. For the first clip, set 2 keyframes 12 frames apart on the right crop parameter. For the second and first clip, set the first keyframes at the playhead's position. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion so it can move along quicker, so I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Once you've done this, your filters bar should look something similar to mine, but if not, make adjustments where needed. Let's marquee select our 3 clips and add a colorized filter to them. Go to the Effects browser, Video Filters, Image Control, select Colorize, and apply it to your selection. Change the remap black and remap white to taste on each clips. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion, so I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Once you've colorized your clips, let's render them by pressing Command R. I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Let's see what we got. There you go, a nice split screen animation with colorization using nothing more than the crop tool. This is a nice effect to use in any situation, so try it out and take it a step further. Let's move on to our next effect, crop stopping. This effect was also inspired by people constantly asking me how to do split screen effects and such. All you need for this effect is the crop tool, music, and markers. I have 2 clips in my timeline with 3 markers above them. I've already listened to my music and I created a marker every time I heard a drum beat by pressing the M key. Go to the first marker by pressing shift down. Double click the clip on track 2 and go to the motion tab. Twirl down the crop parameter. This next step is up to you to decide what direction you want the clip to appear, as this will work whether you're coming up, down, left, or right. For this example, I'll come from the right. Set the right crop to 73. Move to the second marker by pressing shift down. Change the right crop to about 30%. Set a keyframe. Move back 1 frame, and change it back to 73%. Move to the third marker by pressing shift down twice. Change the value from 30 to 0. Move back 1 frame. Change the value back to 30. Let's move to the beginning of our first clip. Alright, let's see what we got. There you go, a clip appearing in pieces according to the beat of the music. You can stretch out the length of the crop depending on how many beats you want to highlight. Let's move on to our next effect, image mask video feedback. This effect was inspired by the effect I did in Music Video Effects Volume 1, and this is how I took it one step further. As you saw in the preview, I had a custom background that was behind it. I'll discuss how to do that after I complete the effect. This effect will also require a matte that you could create in either Photoshop or Motion. I have the matte that I created in Photoshop as a PSD file in my project browser. In Photoshop, I created a matte by using the custom shape tool and making it large enough to cover the dimensions of my clip. I have a video clip on track 2. Go to your effects browser, video filters, scroll down to matte, select image mask, and apply it to your clip on track 2. Double click the filters bar to go to the filters tab. Go to your project browser. Drop the custom shape PSD sequence into the image well. Change the channel from luminance to alpha. Go to your effects browser, video filters, scroll down to perspective, and apply the basic 3D filter. Change its order in the filter chain by moving it to the top. Use the center parameter to reposition the clip, but be careful not to go beyond the bounds of the clip or the mask will lose its shape. Go to the effects browser, video filters, go to image control, and select colorize and apply it to your clip on track 2. Change the remap white to taste. Go to the motion tab for your clip, bring the scale down to about 75, and reposition it to the edge of the screen on the right. Let's duplicate this clip 3 times while holding Option Shift and dragging up. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion, so I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Reposition each clip until the last clip is at the edge of the screen on the left. Alright, I'm back. Change the remap white parameter for the duplicated clips to taste. Alright, we're going to offset the appearance of each clip by performing roll edits on its endpoint. Select the video clips and press Option up arrow to move them 1 track above. I'm going to select the endpoints of each clip and perform a roll edit on this endpoint in a sped up fashion. I'll provide a text box for more info so you can follow along. So I'll be back with you in just a second. By performing roll edits on the endpoints of each clips, This offsets timing so they don't appear at the same time. Let's perform roll edits on the out points of the clips to make them disappear. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion as well, and provide a text info for you to follow along. Alright, I'm back. Let's highlight all 4 of our clips and bring them back down one track by pressing Option down arrow. After we render this, the clips will appear and disappear in a staggered fashion. Let's take care of our cell background by adding a filter pack. I'll be back with you guys in just a second. Alright, I'm back. I added a filter pack, and these are the filters in this order: stripes, bloom, slit scan, and halftone. You can find these in the effects browser by going through the video filters folder. Let's render this by pressing Option R. I'll be back with you guys in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Let's see what we got. There you go, a video feedback effect with masked clips. You can use this effect with multiple clips with the same duration. Also, if you want, you can use a flop filter and have them go the other way. Let's move on to our next effect, Home Improvement Effect version 2. This effect was inspired by a previous tutorial I did, which is in the playlist link I provided. I figured out a way to take it one step further. For this effect, you'll need Photoshop to cut out a freeze frame, or if you want, you can use motion as a substitute. Industrial Revolution's multispace will play a part in this as well. I will also be using a transition from a third-party plugin site, CGM, which you can download a trial of their plugins for free. I'll briefly explain what I cut out in the PSD file. I have my PSD file in my project browser. I'm going to double-click it to bring it to the timeline. From the still image I exported, I cut out the woman, I cut out her top half, I cut out the bottom half, and I kept the original picture to fill up any holes after I'm done animating to make the transition seamless. I'm going to nest the woman cutout, the top half, and the bottom half into their own individual sequences by pressing Option C and renaming them accordingly. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion, so I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Marquee select the top half and bottom half sequences. Go to your effects browser, Video Filters, scroll down to Industrial Revolution, select Multispace, and apply it to your top half and bottom half selection. If your playhead's not at the endpoint of your sequence, press Shift-I to do so now, or the Home key. Option double-click the top half to bring it into the viewer. Scroll down and reduce the opacity for input B from 1 to 0. Move the playhead about 5 frames, and set a keyframe for position Y and angle X. Move the playhead 12 frames forward, and set keyframes for those same parameters. Change the position Y to 0.8, and the angle X to -90. Leave the second keyframes at their default values. I'm going to repeat these steps for the bottom half sequence. For the first keyframes, set the position Y to -0.8 and the angle X to 90. Leave the second keyframes at the default values. Once you've done that, go to the timeline and shift the bottom half keyframes to line up with the last keyframe of the top half. Let's duplicate the female cutout sequence by holding Option Shift and dragging up. I'm going to apply a CGM transition to my duplicate cutout. Go to your effects browser, scroll up to Video Transitions, go to CGM DVE Wipe, and select Flash Wipe, and apply it to the endpoint of your duplicated cutout. Double-click the transition to go to the transition editor, change the duration to 15 frames, and manipulate the rest of the parameters to taste. Press R to enable the roll tool. Select the endpoint of the transition. Let's move it 1 second, 5 frames. Select the endpoint of the original female cutout. Let's move this about 1 second, 20 frames. Go to the effects browser, twirl up the video transitions folder, twirl down the video filters folder, twirl down the glow folder, and twirl down the image control folder. Select the light rays filter in the glow folder and select the levels filter in the image control folder. Apply those two filters to the female cutout on track 4. Option double click the filters bar on track 4. Go to the filters tab. Bring the levels filter to the top of the filter order. Change the input tolerance from 50 to 0, as well as the input. If you need to only see the female cutout on track 4, select it in the timeline and press Ctrl S. Increase the light rays to 200 and reposition the center to taste. Set 2 keyframes for the amount for the light rays 12 frames apart. Move the play at 10 frames from its current position, and set another keyframe for the amount and bring it down to 0. Go into the timeline and press Ctrl S to re-enable everything else. With the playhead in the last keyframe, select the out point of the cutout on track 4. Press E to perform an extend edit. With the playhead at the last keyframe, select the endpoint of the original image on track 1. Press E to perform an extend edit. Now the original fills in any holes left from cutting out the individual portions. Reduce the length of the overall sequence to about 3 seconds by performing extend and roll edits on either the endpoint or the out point. I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Drag the PSD sequence into your main sequence. Let's render our PSD sequence by selecting it and pressing Command R. I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Let's see what we got. There you go, the home improvement effect with 3D rotation and a cool wipe transition. You can use this however you please and take it a step further by adding more moving parts. Let's move on to our next effect, instant replay screens. This effect was inspired by watching WWE Raw and watching how they replayed moments during a match. I'm going to show you the technique of creating that animation, but with 2 different clips. For this effect, I'll be using the basic 3D filter and a custom frame I created. I'll also have a cell generator on track 1 for a custom background. I have 2 clips in my timeline with different durations on tracks 2 and 3. I'm going to place a frame overlay on track 4. Double click the clip on track 3 and go to the motion tab. I'm going to reduce the scale to fit within my frame. For me, the scale is about 80%. Select the clip on track 3 and the frame overlay and press Option C to nest items. I'm going to rename it Top IR Screen. Select the top IR screen sequence and press Option up arrow to move it 1 track above. Repeat these steps for the clip on track 2 and name the nested sequence Bottom IR Screen. Alright, I'm back. Select the top IR screen and press Option down arrow to move it back to track 3. Marquee select the 2 sequences. Go to the effects browser, go to video filters, scroll down to perspective, and select basic 3D and apply it to your selection. Option double click the top IR screen's filter bar and go to the filters tab. If your playhead's not already, go to the sequence endpoint by pressing Shift I. Move the playhead about 20 frames. Change the scale to 138. Set a keyframe for the scale, center, and Y rotation at the playhead's current position. Move the playhead about 20 more frames, and set keyframes for Y rotation, center, and scale. Change the scale to somewhere between 45 and 50. Change the Y rotation to 20, and position the center in the upper left-hand corner. Move the playhead about 3 seconds and set keyframes for Y rotation, center, and scale. Keep the values where they're at right now. Move the playhead about 20 more frames and set keyframes for Y rotation, center, and scale. Change the Y rotation back to 0, the center on the X and Y position to 0, and the scale to 138. The top screen now animates into place and back. Option double click the bottom IR screen. Move the playhead to in between the top IR screen animation for better compositing. Bring the scale to somewhere between 50 and 60. Change the Y rotation to somewhere between -20 and -25. Change the center to the lower right-hand corner. When you're repositioning the bottom IR screen, make sure that the top and bottom intersect like I have it right now. Now we have our screens where they need to be. Let's apply a filter pack to the cell generator on track 1. Alright, I'm back. I applied these filters in this order: stripes, bloom, halftone, and slit scan. Modify the parameters for these filters to achieve the look that you want. Let's render all this and see what we got. I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Let's see what we got. There you go, an instant replay screen animation using picture frames and the basic 3D filter. Now, you can use this to highlight a sports moment like ESPN does, or the way that the WWE does. Let's move on to our final effect, multiple videos inside of extruded text. This effect was inspired by a Genius DV tutorial, as well as a tutorial I did in Premiere Pro. I figured out how to take it one step further in Final Cut Pro by adding extrusion with the extrude filter. This effect will also require Photoshop for the creation of the letters and strokes. I have a multi-letter PSD sequence in my project browser. Let's look quickly at what we have. I have letters with a black background. I also have letters with only a stroke. Let's close this by pressing Ctrl W. Select the PSD sequence and create as many duplicates as you have letters and strokes. For my letters and strokes, I have 6 overall, so I'll create 5 duplicates. I'm going to go into each duplicate and solo either a letter or stroke by pressing Ctrl S. I'm going to go into the first sequence and solo the first letter on track 1. Then I'll go back to the project browser and rename it Letter N Luma. After I've done that, I'm going to go into my first duplicate and solo the layer on track 2. I'm going to go back to my project browser and rename this Letter N Stroke. I'll repeat these steps for the other letters as well. After doing this, you should have sequences for each letter and each stroke in the PSD file. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion, so I'll be back in just a second. Alright, I'm back. I have 3 clips in my timeline with a duration of about 4 seconds. I'm going to select all 3 and press Option up arrow to move them one track above to make it easier for compositing. I will place the letter N Luma sequence underneath the first clip and the letter N stroke on top of the clip, like so. I'll right click the clip on track 3, go to composite mode, select Travel Matte Luma, and now our clip will take the shape of the letter N and the stroke will highlight that shape. I'm going to repeat this step for the other 2 clips with the letters L and E. I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Once you've done that, let's nest each item with the letters and strokes into their own sequence and name them accordingly. I'm going to do this in a sped up fashion, so I'll be back with you in just a bit. Let's option double click the letter N sequence and go to the Motion tab. Move the play to the sequence endpoint by pressing Shift I. Set a keyframe for the center at the sequence's endpoint. Press Shift O to go to the out point and set a keyframe for the center there as well. Go back to the first keyframe and move the sequence off screen. Go to the second keyframe and move the sequence off screen to the left. Let's copy the N letter sequence's motion by selecting it and pressing Command C to copy. Select the letters L and E and press Option V to paste attributes. Select Basic Motion and hit OK. Place the L and E sequence on top of the N sequence. Highlight both the L and E sequence. Type in +21 to move them 21 frames. Deselect the L sequence by holding that command and clicking on it. Type in +21 to move the E sequence 21 more frames forward. Let's select all three and move them 10 frames forward. With all the letter sequences selected, press Option C to nest items and name it Letter Animation. With all the letters nested, now we can add the Extrude filter. Go to your effects browser, Video Filters, scroll down to Stylize, select the Extrude filter, and apply it to your letter animation sequence. Option double click the Filters bar for the letter animation sequence and go to the Filters tab. Let's change the angle from 45 to 225. Let's change the distance from 50 to 40. Let's change the back brightness to 0.81. We have our letters extruded now. Let's add a filter pack to our cell generator. I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Here the filters are applied in this order: stripes, bloom, target, and insect eye. Let's select our letter animation in our cell generator and press Option R to render it. I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, I'm back. Let's see what we got. There you go. Multiple videos inside of extruded text. This is a step above the original multiple videos inside of text that Genius DV did, as well as the one that I did for Premiere Pro. Use this effect when you want to have the illusion of extruded text in Final Cut Pro, as the extrude filter does not allow for it to move in 3D space. Well, that's it for Music Video Effects Volume 3 in Final Cut Pro 7. This is the end of the Music Video Effects trilogy in Final Cut Pro 7. I will only do Final Cut Pro tutorials one effect at a time from now on. I've enjoyed creating these volume of effects and being able to show people what music video effects are possible in Final Cut Pro. As much as I've enjoyed them, it can be creatively frustrating to come up with new effects each and every time. I will soon do a volume of music video effects for Premiere Pro and tutorials for avid media composers, so be on the lookout. Check out the links in the video description below, and hopefully they can help you out. Well, that's it for this first edition of NLE Ninja Effects. Until then, stay creative.